Hello, welcome to Postcolonial Space. I'm Masood Raja, and what follows is an excerpted clip from one of my longer webinars. So, what I've decided is that sometimes when people ask really interesting questions, I will pull out that particular part of a webinar and make it available to you as a short clip so that if you don't have time to watch a 1 hour webinar, you can at least watch and listen to the brief exchanges that I usually have with people who attend my webinars. So here is one such clip from a recent webinar. I hope you enjoy it. This isn't necessarily about section 2 in particular, but do we view things fall apart with the same criticism as if we view things fall apart as better, then why? Well, it's not a question of better. When you read things fall apart, you will realize that Achebe didn't go and write a native romance, right? He didn't want to write a story in which, say, Africans can be great, noble people. No, he gave us a flawed hero. A hero who's proud, who's haughty. The novel contains deep critiques of the customs that are being followed in the tribes, right? So what he gave us was then, here, if you consider Africans as fully realized human beings, then you can read a complex story about a person who was too proud, less compassionate, right? This is what happens to a hero who follows the code to the letter and lives by it, right? And then hence dies tragically. So what he then gives us a human story of Oquanako and what happens to him or what he does, instead of giving us a romance in which the African is this wise person and prophet-like. So the reason people think of it as a good novel, right, is because it centers the lives of Africans. Ibo culture gives us vocabularies that they would use in English, right? The proverbs and everything else. But it gives us a story set in Africa in which Africans are the main characters and Europeans are on the periphery, right? Even though colonialism is happening, one system is dying, the other is coming in, right? That is the ending of the novel, right? They were arrested by the local colonial officer. So I don't know. I don't compare in terms of which is better, which is not. Both are good novels, right? But obviously, Things Fall Apart was written in response to Heart of Darkness, right? It was written not, I can give you a perfect African life, no, but I can give you a novel in which Africa is not a backdrop and in which Africans have a culture, have a language, can have complex relationships, right? So that's what I think makes the novel really interesting. If we read Marlowe's views about this entire enterprise, then to him, Kurtz wouldn't be this superhuman figure. To him, Kurtz would be an example of, look, this is what happens to you, to your best, right? Out there in the jungle, when they take it upon themselves to try to become kings and gods, right? So I don't think so Marlowe will see him as a success story, but probably as a failure, right? But we'll read section 3 and then come back to this question. Does Marlowe separate the Kurtz that he learned about through stories and other people versus the Kurtz that he actually found in Congo? Oh yes, remember, like he shares with you that no longer did he have those long hair. He was bald, emaciated, right? And almost not able to speak. So the Kurtz that he sees and retrieves and who eventually dies is not the Kurtz that he had heard about. There was no life in him. There was no vigor in him, right? And he was almost like a babbling, dying patient to Marlowe, right? So that's how Marlowe encounters him when they rescue him and when he tries to run away and go back. Now the question is it Kurtz the same Kurds who had come to the interior? Or is it a Kurds who can no longer go back? What's the reason? Maybe for what he has done, or maybe that's the only place where he can be who he is. You know, we don't know the answer to that, right? But as we read the next section and do a concluding discussion, maybe we'll find something more. Good questions, though. But overall, let me conclude on this today is that by section 1 and section 2, I mean, it's a novella, right? But one thing that it does really nicely is it gives us a critical view of this entire enterprise. And to me, that is what kind of redeems Marlowe, right? Because it's not necessarily a romance where it is like, oh, here is what the Europeans have done. They've brought civilization. It is a critique of what is being done to the land and to the people. There is no doubt about it, right? We see that. We see Marlowe's disdain for this entire enterprise. There is not even a single person that he actually likes. Or maybe that is Marlowe, but he has something negative to say about everyone in that enterprise, right? He also openly criticizes the greed that leads these people, right? And there are open criticisms of that. So in that sense, then, this is a complete indictment of the colonial system in Congo. Now, you already know that Conrad has already set up an efficient system, a system behind which has an idea, which has an ideology. So that means that as we read it as British citizens, let's say of that time, we are reading it as Belgian atrocities, right? Because we do it better, right? That juxtaposition has already been made and would probably be part of a British reader's consciousness that this is not us. So that creates a space for Conrad to offer this as an aberration, right? And then within that, his vocabulary about Africans and everything else is laced with latent and obvious racism, right? But there are moments where, Marlowe acknowledges the nobility of the native people as well. But by and large, Achebe would still say, it is a deeply racist text. What my point is that there is a way to use the novel, not redeem it. Use the novel, and that comes from trauma theory and from theory of consciousness and its connection to teaching. People who have gone and studied how our brains work and how empathy can be developed. And what they've taught us is that if we read a sentimental representation of any constituency, any group, women, natives, anything that makes us feel that they are being mistreated, that they are being tortured. With good pedagogy, we can use those moments in the novel to tell our students, think about it. Do you feel bad when you read this passage? Do you feel any empathy for those characters? And what ends up happening is that experience of reading it then makes it possible for a reader to realign their empathy structures, right? And that is where the novel is useful. It had an impact in the world, right? It had an impact in a sense that people who read it was like, oh my God, this is what is being done there, right? So it had a political impact as well. But post 1970s, post-colonial studies and identity theory, we know a racist text when we see it. And there is no doubt about that, about the latent and explicit racism of the novel. Yeah. All right. It's about 56 minutes. I've been talking a lot and I get tired these days. I had to go to my doctor to get some medicine because I've been speaking so much for like 3 of my classes that my throat was under some kind of strain. But that's all I have. So I will post the prompt to the journal, right? Probably today, if not today, then tomorrow. But you'll have ample time to submit it. Good. But you can't empathize with an object or something you don't see as human, oh, absolutely. I'm not saying that Marlowe empathizes with them. There are instances of that. But what I'm saying is that when you, me, and everyone else reads that account, right, we know that these people are being objectified and offered to us as merely as victims, which would be objectionable from my post-colonial point of view, because I'm saying, well, why can't they speak? Why can't they represent themselves, right? But from the point of view of empathy, we can take that representation and ask ourselves, okay, objectified, whatever is happening to them, how do I feel about it? And of course, my mind would tell me these people are being mistreated, right? They are being tortured, they are being worked to death. And that can be used in a pedagogical situation to create empathy for those who might be absolutely or others in terms of the social structures that we live in. And that's where the novel becomes useful. But other than that, any constituency that is not given agency or silenced or objectivized, obviously that is either racism, sexism, paternalism, whatever you want to call it. But anytime a group is silenced and totally represented either from a male point of view or a European point of view, that is problematic. Right? So when we read Achebe, you should read more carefully. You'll see these are all the arguments that Achebe makes against the essay. That's why his speech, which he eventually writes as an essay, is absolutely one of the most important things. Now, there are professors, I hope you don't encounter them, who will teach it just as a European text. They absolutely do not acknowledge what we post-colonialists do. And so if you ask them such questions, they would I don't know what their answer would be, but I don't think there are a lot of those kind of scholars and professors. But there are some, who still believe that, oh, we shouldn't read it as an African text. Those African characters are not important. It's the story of a European character and how it dismantles itself. And that begs the question, why do we need an entire world of African cultures silenced so that the European self can represent itself, right? So yeah, I am absolutely not denying the inherent racism of the novel. I just try to also retrieve a few things that I can use that give me some hope. Cool, good questions. Thank you so much for watching or listening to this brief clip. If you are interested in the longer version, the link will be in the description and you can watch the whole webinar. Thank you so much for your support. And as always, if you have any questions, any concerns, you can always post them in the comments and I'll be happy to respond to them. If you have a moment and if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please do so now so that you get timely notifications of whatever is happening on this channel. Thank you for your support. Stay safe, and as always, from me to you, peace and love.